This is the Dover Download Podcast. My name is Christopher Parker, and for the past 25 years, I've had the pleasure of working with, learning from, and talking to a variety of volunteer, staff, and community members. This podcast explores conversations, activities, and a variety of policies and programs which exist here in Dover to improve the community in one way or another. Over the past 10 years, not just in Dover, but universally around the country, we have had conversations about racial equity and equality. We have had them on political levels, we've had them on social levels, and we've had them on cultural levels. This episode, I'm joined by Jose Feliciano and Terry Carter from the Committee for Racial Equity and Inclusion here in Dover. Terry, I believe you're going to start us off with a statement.
Yes, our committee opens meetings regularly with a land acknowledgement, so I'd like to do that this morning. This meeting takes place at Cochico within Indakana, now called Dover, New Hampshire, which is the unceded traditional ancestral homeland of the Abenaki, Pennacook, and Wabanaki peoples past and present. We acknowledge and honor with gratitude the land, waterways, living beings, and Alnubak, the people who have stewarded Indakana for many millennia.
Appreciate you doing that. It's good for the listener to be exposed to something that is important for us as a community, but may not always rise to the top of awareness that it occurs. And I know for your group, you read that at every meeting, and we have that listed on buildings throughout the community, public buildings, to acknowledge the same situation. And it's an interesting thought, and I want to come back to it later. But first, let's start off with introductions. Terry, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and why you're on the committee?
Well, I have been back and forth from the seacoast most of my adult life. Got back about 5 years ago. I don't see any reason to leave again. I grew up locally, and when I came back to Dover, wanted to get involved at a meaningful level. Dover has a lot of boards and commissions that offer participation by citizens. Everyone, go look at the website, pick a board or a commission. I did that. This Committee for Racial Equity and Inclusion had openings, and I thought that was a great place to point my energy.
Jose, how about you?
Morning, Chris. Yeah, so Jose Feliciano. So I was born and raised in Puerto Rico. My family also lived for some time in New York City as I was a child. And 2012, I had the opportunity to be offered a job here in Rochester, New Hampshire. I'm a manufacturing engineer, so mechanical engineer by academics. Mm-hmm. This was for medical device manufacturing. So took the opportunity to relocate to New Hampshire, particularly Rochester. Had an amazing experience there, right? Where perhaps at that time, being from a different place sparked conversation around culture, and found myself with a poly that wanted to hear and listen and learn about Latino culture and Puerto Rican culture. So decided to stay here and relocated to Dover, bought a house, Bellamy Road, in 2017, and have been there since.
Nice.
My professional career allowed me to have formal training in DEI, and similar to Terry, right? On the website for Dover, saw an opportunity. There's an opening for the Committee for Racial Equity and Inclusion. So applied, and I've been serving now. It's going to be my third year serving. And today I'm the chair for the committee.
Nice. I appreciate you both coming out of the woodwork and joining a committee, and then also the way you both just encourage others to do so. Because, Terry, I think you're right. We have a lot of boards and commissions. We need a lot of volunteers, and we've been very blessed over the many years to have people like yourselves step forward and get involved and actually govern the community, which is the real role of these volunteer boards and committees. What I appreciate is the enthusiasm you both have for coming to speak to us today, but also to serve on a monthly basis. Jose, I want to key on something that you said in your introduction, which is, and I'm paraphrasing, you moved from the big city to Rochester. I'm sure there were other moves in the middle, but you get an opportunity to have conversations about your culture, about your background, about differences. What interests me about that is that we are in a region, not just Dover, but I'll say the seacoast, where 90% of us, 97% of us probably, are white.
Yes.
And on the one hand, that's an exclusivity. On the other hand, it is an opportunity for conversation and an opportunity to learn. And I'm curious from your standpoint, how you see the role of Cree in that conversation or opportunity.
It's foundational to the role of the committee. So going back to the purpose of the committee, so initially the events from George Floyd sparked the creation of the committee, right? That was May 2020. And around June, already the Dover government was stating that was not acceptable.
Right.
And the immediate move that happened was to create the ad hoc committee for racial equity and inclusion. So the purpose of the committee at that point is to be advisory and identify opportunities for Dover government committees and boards to, if there's an opportunity to improve a service or make sure that they're not obscured by racial biases, then we should highlight those and then establish an action plan so that it can be improved upon. So similar to what I find myself doing in my personal life of talking about my culture and expressing and educating on it as best as I could from my perspective, then the committee does that, but at a very broader level, right? So the conversation then, the education is not necessarily about a particular culture, but the conversation is about what is diversity, what is equity, what is inclusion, what is our situation for the racial composition of our communities, and how does that matter? So the first portion is us to be educated and then highlight and deliver that education to other committees and boards so that decisions that perhaps before you could not identify there was an element there of racial equity and inclusion. Now that you're educated, you can see it, right? And that's key. So example will be the renaming of the First Settlers Cemetery. That could have gone through and it could have had a new name today. But because there was awareness that could have impact on DEI, or it had a DEI-related aspect, because apart from condemning racism in services, also Dover is committed to be inclusive, responsive, and representative of those communities that have not been have been marginalized through history, right? So this was a great opportunity to do that. And the committee understands that, saw that could be an opportunity to partner with Dover Library and do some research and then identify and promote, say, oh, that should probably be the Thomas Roberts Cemetery. And this is why. Yeah. So all of a sudden now, something that could have gone without notice and a change of a cemetery name, it could have and it would have had impact, perhaps negative impact on that principle of being representative for those that have not been in the past.
One of the touch points I've had with your committee is about 4 years ago when we were considering names for the streets and the park on the waterfront. Mm-hmm. We reached out to Cree and asked for some assistance and put in touch with an indigenous couple with the intent of saying, we don't want to appropriate a name, we want to respect a name, and we want to have something that is related to the property and not just this is a Abenaki or something more general, regional. And I thought it was very good. We came up with Nebi, which is an indigenous word for a bend in the river, and it made perfect sense for the park there. And I think that's, to me, part of the scope is that education piece. Terry, I'm curious, the two of you are not the only members of Cree.
Correct.
If you had an opportunity to welcome new people on, who would you be who should be interested in joining Cree? What's the mindset of the folks at the table at your meetings?
We have an interesting representation of age groups. There's a bunch of people in Jose's cohort, and there's me. It would be great to have in between age groups. I would love to see more business owners on the committee because that's a perspective we really need to get. Our city does not currently have a place where Black women can go get their hair done. And that sounds so basic, but it's a big deal. Everybody, men, women, everybody get their hair done. They go for cuts, they go whatever. So a representative from the business community would bring a perspective about what's missing that we don't have. An international grocery store. And with the university community in Durham not far away, that just seems like it would be a really good fit. So I think our committee can help wake up Dover to these opportunities.
Interesting. I like that idea again of opportunity and education and outreach, and to your point, Jose, responsiveness. Looking at a need and trying to provide a solution as opposed to just talking about the need. What are some of the needs that you've seen in the past that CRE has worked on?
The purpose of the committee is to, like I said earlier, right, be advisory, identify opportunities, and submit plans of actions to be considered by the government. In terms of the opportunities that CRE can act on, is perhaps that's the pivotal point that we find ourselves today, where our mandate still is very valid, but we were asking ourselves, it's about moving the ball forward. And what we do today can change the landscape of CRE in the future and the fact of DEI in general. So community outreach is the first aspect that we need to focus on to gather the information and understand what is the feeling, what is the current state, but more importantly, to create a culture where people feel safe to bring up opportunities, right? And in bringing up those opportunities, educational opportunities will match them. For example, we're just talking about businesses. You're on the Chamber of Commerce also. So we had an opportunity. Terry met with Reed and talked about businesses in Dover, and the conversation led to an interesting statement where Terry asked, are the businesses in Dover asking about DEI? Are they interested? And the answer was no.
Right.
So that highlights that perhaps we can come in to that point. And the education here is if your business plan has a DEI component in it, your likelihood of success improves, because all of a sudden now you're understanding your demographics better, you understand your community, and you perhaps are doing something that's more on point and on target for what is needed. Case in point, I had the opportunity to work with resources from Japan. They go to Boston to do the grocery shopping. One of them lives in Dover. The other one lives in Portsmouth. So why is that? So absolutely, I feel that creating the safe space to people raise matters, then highlights immediate opportunities for quick education. In lieu of that, we also have the basics, right? We need to understand the basics. And should we be going out to commissions and boards and providing those basic points of education? We've talked with Dover Library also to identify what are those recommended reads that we should have? What are those books? And I'm seeing now, even like last week, there was an interesting book that was highlighted on Facebook by Dover Library, where we are talking about a racial component and how difficult that is, right? So there are many opportunities for education.
Yeah.
Perhaps we need to pick the ones that are going to give us the most return right now for what we need to do. And we need to listen to the community. And what is that?
Yeah, I like that idea of not necessarily low-hanging fruit, but easily accessible and measurable conversations so that you can test the waters, see where you get feedback, where you get a positive response, and then you can adjust. You can pivot to do that. It's interesting, Terry, talking about a business case. And I think Jose has some good points of saying, if you offer things from a DEI perspective that maybe no one else is, you create an opportunity for people that are looking for that. As a business owner, which I am not, but having chatted with enough, their bottom line is the bottom line in a lot of ways. So they are looking at, I want to serve all peoples because I want the highest return that I can get. And I think it's an interesting education opportunity there to be able to say, look bigger than that one item, but at the same time, respecting that if there's no revenue, there's no business. So it'll be great. I hope you do find some some business owners that are interested, because I think you're right. That is a different perspective than most people tend to think about. As you move forward, what are some of the ways that you do education and outreach to the general public? If I wasn't listening to this podcast, what would be some ways that I would know that what CREE is doing and how I can get involved?
So the Dover City website has a link to the committee's page, if you will. There you'll find our agenda for meetings. So we meet every second Thursday of the month. We meet from 7 to 8:30. So, and you can join us in the municipal building on the second floor conference room. So there's a public forum where you can come in, present a topic, or just listen. And perhaps there, see if you want to participate, join, or how can you contribute to this? So that's one way to understand what is happening. If you cannot make it to the meeting, the meetings are recorded. There's meeting minutes. And every week before our meeting, we put on the website the agenda for the meeting. So if there's a topic that seems interesting or you want to learn more or contribute to the conversation, then you can be prepared and do it in that fashion. We also will be focusing, perhaps I'm not sure if I mentioned this earlier, but gathering information is the first step of it, right? Listening, getting the opinions, listening to the voices of our communities. So how do we do that? We can wait and hope people come in and tell us.
Right.
Or listening to one of your recent podcasts with the Dover Library when they're going through this transition of the renovation and finding themselves to do things a bit differently.
Yeah.
And the book club service they have now, they go to houses, they deliver them, right? So, what stuck with me was we're going out. Right, the team is going out there and they're delivering the services.
They're going to
the community. Right?
They're going to the audience as opposed to waiting for the audience to come to them.
So that resonated with us. It aligned with also what our thinking was, where we need to start going out there and finding these things, finding those voices and documenting them, and then tallying them up in reports and providing them back for action to happen. Last year we had a great activity. We went to the Woodman School, and it was celebrating diversity. What a beautiful activity. Whitney Carrier, she's on the committee. She invited us to this, and I can say that I had not spoken so much Spanish in Dover since I was there. That was great to begin with, right? So, but the most striking thing from that activity was I saw so many children dressed in their colors, wearing their pride on their faces. They had musical interpretations. Their fathers were supporting them. Their parents had tables with typical foods. Everything was open. They were there talking and uplifting their cultures and celebrating their cultures in that diverse space. So we used that opportunity to poll very quickly the people that were there and see, what does this community have to say, right? And that resulted in a couple of good nuggets that we can come back and say, guys, you need to think about this, right? Particularly about having translation services or available for the meter maids or the different offices. What happens if I want to open a food truck, but my English is not too good? So, right, this was what we received directly in the activity. They walked into an office and they couldn't understand what was being asked, right? The communication gap was avoided that potential new business to be established in the city because, right, there was a gap. So we were coming back and saying, guys, Dover Police has a great translation service. You can use that, right? You can call quickly and they can provide that, or should you have an app on your phone and at least minimize the gap, right? Shrink it as much as possible.
Yeah, I think that to your point on that, embracing technology and embracing those opportunities that might not actually seem to be opportunities, but are, and minimizing the gap. You're never going to close it using an app for translation, but it's a good step forward.
It is. So we went there, gathered information, great success. So now we're going to continue to do that. We're going to go out.
Good.
And one of the activities that's on the docket is we have a small plaza, Immigrants Park. And we realized that the flags there, although represent many of the communities that comprise Dover, they're not all of them, right? And it probably will be impossible to put new masts up and have new flags for every single community to be represented. So what is the next best thing that we can do? We should acknowledge them at least, right? And we're going to partner with the Arts Commission and Linnea. She's not on the committee anymore, but she served on the council, and she's going to be supporting us as well, where we would invite the community to do a chalk art on the park, so we can have at least the flags represented there. Those flags that are not waving in the air can be now at least drawn and acknowledged. And we're going to use that opportunity to create a safe environment for people to do that, feel comfortable. And we're going to then use that same opportunity to then poll them and say, have you heard about the committee? Do you know about the committee? Would you participate? Would you come? Well, how would you like or prefer to receive information from the committee? So those are the things, basic things we need to start answering ourselves. And that's the strategy. Small activities like that.
You know, I'm glad you brought up Immigrants Park, because I remember it was founded in the mid-'80s, and then it had a resurgence maybe 2000-ish. And the flags that are there represented the immigrant populations that came together to advocate for creating that park. And I agree with you that there's a lot more immigrant heritage here in the community. And over the years, it has ebbed and flowed as far as people paying attention to it and embracing it. And if the immigrant population wants to come forward and embrace it now, that would be a great thing. It would be a great showcase for our history and our varied cultures that make up the community. So wish you luck in that endeavor. That sounds very creative and good community project.
I can imagine the kind of conversation that we sparked by being in that space together, right? So I'm looking forward to that.
Well, I'm not sure if either of you were here when there was a group of LGBTQ that adopted the park years ago, and they painted everything rainbow colors, and that sparked conversation then. I almost wish that was now, because it would be a very different conversation. So maybe that's part of what leads out of this, is continuing that conversation of inclusion and acceptance. Jose, as we wrap up, if someone wants to get involved, are there vacancies on the committee? And can you repeat when the committee meets and where it meets?
Yes, Chris. We do have vacancies in the committee, and the committee meets every second Thursday, and we also hold meetings on the fourth Thursday of the month. So please keep an eye on the website, because the fourth Thursday of the month could happen or not, but the agenda will be publicized there.
So the second Thursday is the regular meeting, and then from time to time you'll have special meetings on the fourth Thursday.
Correct. And the reason being, right, if we think about the work that we do, we only have so many contact hours, so we want to have more time together to be even more productive.
It's great. I appreciate you both joining me today and sharing the information about CRE and all of the activities. Look forward to having you back in the future.
Thank you so much.
Dover has a wealth of history in its over 400 years of existence. Coming up, Mike Gillis is going to share some of that history with us.
One of the most visible and iconic historic markers in Dover is the Soldiers and Sailors Civil War Monument between the Public Library and the McConnell Center. The nearly 42-foot, more than 60-ton granite and bronze monument was erected in 1912 thanks to Dover's Colonel Daniel Hall, who funded its construction following a years-long community campaign by the Grand Army of the Republic and members of the Women's Relief Corps to memorialize Civil War veterans. But this week, in 1923, 11 years since it had been built, residents noticed something had changed. Upon closer inspection, it was discovered that the bronze sword held by the sailor on the bottom level of the monument was curving in the wrong direction. Officials and police inspected further and soon found shoe prints along the monument's base and lower level, indicating someone had climbed the statue and likely bent the sword in the process. Police suggested that it may have been an act of vandalism by kids, either reckless or inadvertent. At the time of the crime, what is now the McConnell Center was the high school, and the school and library campus was a busy place for Dover's younger crowd. According to the local newspaper at the time, Foster's Daily Democrat, the sword appeared to be hopelessly bent. Nonetheless, the newspaper called upon the city to attempt a repair before Memorial Day, coming up in about a month. The newspaper also expressed hope that the miscreants would be found and made to appear before Judge Murphy in municipal court. Although we're not certain repairs were made in time, the monument still featured prominently in Dover's Memorial Day tribute that year. On the afternoon of the event, the monument was draped in an American flag and surrounded by a large installation of flowers, and accompanied by a band tribute. Shortly thereafter, Dover's Memorial Day Parade began at Franklin Square. 18 Civil War veterans marched in the parade that year.
Thanks for listening to the Dover Download this week. If you like what you heard, subscribe through your favorite podcast aggregator. And if you have something you want to hear a topic on, let us know. Finally, this is just one of the many ways we share information about the city of Dover. You can subscribe to the Dover Downloads email newsletter every week or other newsletters that we have by going to the City of Dover homepage, www.dover.nh.gov. Have a great week.